You are listening to the Batflip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host Matt, coming to you on March 23rd of 2021. Got the injury bug just still creeping its head up as spring training, starts to wind down. As we got about 2 weeks, or no, actually a week until opening day, pretty much a week from this Thursday. And got an extension that happened this week. And then we're going to bring our 2021 NL predictions this week with awards and who we think the wildcard teams are going to be. But before we jump into all that, let me bring my co-host in. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right. Just hanging out this week and working and just chilling. How about yourself?
Just, trying to do all this. It's been crazy. Just scheduled to go get my vaccines today. So start the first one on Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. Got some trips coming. So thinking ahead, I think it's going to be mandatory. So might as well just get it out of the way right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I just got eligible for it, but since I've already had the virus back in the fall, I figured I'd wait a little while so some people who need it real bad can get it, and I don't want to take any up that people need. So,
Yeah,
but
hopefully it's starting to round the corner and we can, we already got some fans back in the stands, but hopefully by the end of this year we'll be back to 100% normal, hopefully.
oh yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for
Well,
that.
yeah. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll start with kind of the injury bug again. One that we found out today was Zach Gallen of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He has a forearm fracture in his right forearm. No timeline, but they did say he can still play light catch as he's still going to be able to rehab that.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate injury to have, and of course, you hear about a forearm injury, and you're thankful that it's a hairline fracture as opposed to some other things that can be the case. Like a lot of times, you hear about like forearm tightness being a UCL symptom, but um, luckily, this is just a stress fracture. I mean, it stinks for Zach Gallen to miss some time, but hopefully, with the Diamondbacks being in the position they're in right now, there's no rush for him to return. So hopefully, they'll let him fully heal up, and maybe he might miss a little bit of time, but by the time he's healthy, he can put up some good numbers this year as he has in the past. So, but
Yeah,
that
he's
stinks.
been quietly emerging as probably the best starter that Arizona has. They got him in that deal for Jazz Chisholm, and he's looked really good, especially last season. He looked really really good.
Absolutely, he's a solid pitcher. So.
Yeah, well, we'll jump over to Chris Sale. He's not thrown yet. It doesn't seem like that's elbow related. He is still recovering from that Tommy John surgery, but it doesn't seem like this is related to that in any way.
Yeah, they said a non-elbow related setback had occurred with him. He has not thrown at all, and that puts him pretty far behind schedule. So, we talked this week, heard about Justin Verlander throwing a little bit. Obviously he's not going to return anytime soon, but it's a step in the right direction. And it really stinks to hear that Chris Sale's not throwing at all, and it sounds like he's behind schedule. I was hoping that we might see him at some point this year, but it sounds like that might not happen. So. We'll see though.
Yeah, I mean, Boston, I mean, it's going to be a down season for Boston, really, anyways. So, I mean, it's not really in any rush to hurry Chris Sale back.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that stinks for Boston is, I mean, you could squint your eyes and you could look at their lineup. Some of the players they have, like Bogarts, Devers, um, maybe have a couple of breakout players. Verdugo's really good too. Have a couple of breakout players like maybe Bobby Dahlback or something. Christian Vasquez is a good player. You could squint your eyes and see that, and maybe if Chris Sale came back strong and Eduardo Rodriguez coming back from being out last year, you could maybe see a team. Evaldi bounces back. You could see maybe a team that could contend for the wild card, but without Chris Sale, I just don't see that happening. So stinks for Boston, but of course, um, hopefully Chris Sale recovers fully, more so than quickly. I mean, obviously, we want him to recover quickly and fully, but I'd rather him get back to 100% in 2022 than try to rush it back halfway through this year and need another Tommy John. So,
Absolutely. Well, another guy that we've talked about, especially last week we talked about him, and that's Carlos Cookie Carrasco. he's re-injured that hamstring, and it looks like he's going to be out through April or through late April at least. So looking probably at May by the time we're going to see Carlos Carrasco on a major league mound if he doesn't have any more setbacks.
Yeah, this was the worry with Carrasco from the time the Mets traded for him. He's had his health issues the past couple years, some of them not baseball related, but um, he has had baseball related injuries as well. And how much is he going to be able to get you out on the mound? And right now it's not looking too bright there. I mean, excuse me. Obviously, with Francisco Lindor coming in that trade, Carrasco wasn't the key piece, but still, you look at Carlos Carrasco, and you would hope that he would be a part of that rotation because behind their big two guys in Degrom and Stroman, you look at Syndergaard and possibly Syndergaard, how depending on how healthy he is, coming back from Tommy John. You really need another guy or two because, as we'll talk about here in a little bit in our predictions, the NL East is a bloodbath. So you're going to need all arms on deck, all hands on deck to be to win that division or really to contend in that division. And miss it, having one of your top pitchers miss a lot of time is not going to be a good thing for the Mets. So
Yeah, and with the questions already surrounding what Marcus Stroman was going to give you this year, being out last year, and then now Cookie being down, it's really hit to that starting rotation. We thought Jacob Degrom was going to get a lot of help this year with Stroman and Carrasco, and Noah Syndergaard coming back at some point. And as of right now, it doesn't. Stroman looks like the only healthy one, to back up Jacob Degrom.
yeah,
So
and right now, Stroman in his career has been like a number three, a mid rotation
yeah,
arm. So right now, you've got obviously the ace of the staff and really the best pitcher in baseball right now in Degrom. Then you go down to number two, number three. You're looking at Stroman. He can maybe fit into a number two spot if he has a really good year. But behind that, I mean, you're looking at Dustin Peterson as your number three right now at the start of the season, with Carrasco being out, Syndergaard still being out. And then you
yeah,
don't know what you're going to get from a Carrasco who's been injured a lot and missed a lot of time over the last year and a half, or a Syndergaard who's coming off of a Tommy John surgery, especially for a guy that, his whole skill set is his stuff. Obviously, Syndergaard's got other things that make him good. Like he does control very well for someone who throws 100, but his stuff is what makes him so special. And if there's any fall off in that stuff, if there's any fall off in his control to start off coming back from Tommy John, it's going to be a big deal, and they're going to have to rely on him, I believe, to have a big time season as soon as he comes back. So, which is tough to do with Tommy John. So, we'll see what happens there. Hopefully, as we've said so many times, we're all pulling for Carrasco with all he's been through. So hopefully he doesn't miss too much time and he can come back healthy.
yeah. Hopefully he doesn't. Another guy who we don't want to see miss too much time, and it sounds like he avoided something very big here. That was Fernando Tatis. He ended up leaving the game early today with some left shoulder discomfort. He fielded a ball in the hole, turned and threw it, and then next thing you know, he just put basically his hand on his hip and started walking off the field. He'll be reevaluated tomorrow, but all the stuff coming out from after that, it sounds like he should be fine. But it's going to be pretty worrisome if it is a bigger deal, especially with that being his lead shoulder when he bats.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Fernando Tatis Jr. is a guy who is irreplaceable for the Padres. They just don't. There's no way they could replace him in their lineup, and he's, he left shoulder discomfort is definitely something that is worrisome, and we've seen it the last couple of years with even if you're able to play through that, you've had a couple guys who have tried to play through that shoulder injury and really struggled. Like, we talked about Nolan Arenado last year. He had by far the worst hitting year of his career last year, nursing a little bit of a shoulder injury. So, um, hopefully it ends up being nothing, but we'll see. It might hinder him at the very beginning of the season. The season's only a week away, so we'll see. But
Yeah. So we'll jump on to our next guy, which is Kirby Yates. It sounds like he's going to need Tommy John surgery. He missed, I believe, all of last year, or he only threw like one inning last year for the Padres. He had been dealing with some elbow issues, opted not to have Tommy John surgery, and then come into spring training. It looked like he was pretty healthy, and then he ended up getting, I think it was a flexor strain, in his latest grapefruit outing, and now it's pretty much that Tommy John is recommended, and that will take him out for the year.
Yeah, that stinks. Obviously, you're glad that he was able to get his payday without having the Tommy John surgery because, when you have a reliever that gets Tommy John and comes back, it's typically going to be a minor league contract. So, you're glad that he was able to get his money. But, man, that stinks for him, and it really stinks for the Blue Jays. You just signed a guy who you badly needed a reliever. You signed a guy who was one of the best ones out there, and all of a sudden now he needs Tommy John surgery. But anytime you sign a reliever, especially one coming off an injury like Kirby Yates had last year. It's always a risk, and I mean this risk looks like it's probably not going to turn out going in their direction unless he gets a second opinion that says he doesn't need Tommy John. But you know that happens every now and then, but it's rare. So
Well, and even if this case, even if he does get that second opinion and he doesn't need Tommy John, he's still looking to be out for quite a while during the regular season.
oh, absolutely. I mean, he'll miss a lot of time with this regardless, but you would hope that he'd be able to pitch this year if that's the case. But Tommy John's probably gonna be the case here, and he'll be out till next year for sure.
Most likely. Well, another piece of Blue Jays news. This one's kind of on a bigger scale, even. Kirby Yates is good, but he's no George Springer. And George Springer had a grade 2 oblique strain. Um, they said that he's progressing well and that he might be able to be for opening day, but oblique strains are very something that you have to be really, really careful with. And if you come back too soon, then you can really risk a longer period of time. I think obliques are usually about 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, something like that. It just depends on the severity of it, um, but yeah, I mean, you don't want to rush an oblique, especially for a big power hitter like Springer. I mean, a lot of you get a lot of your power from that twist and that torque in your swing, and that torque all is put right on that oblique. And if you come back too soon, swing your bat and swing it a little awkward or something, that can tear that oblique right up. So, hopefully he's able to recover. I could probably see him missing the first week or so of the season just as a precaution. But luckily, this happened in spring training. If it had happened in the regular season, he might miss 3 or 4 weeks. But with there still being a week left of spring training, maybe he doesn't miss quite as much time. So, um, but I mean, obviously, the Blue Jays all of a sudden with these injuries are, they're gonna need these guys to get back quickly. So.
Yeah, I mean, if Springer's out for any part of time, really, it's going to hurt that. I mean, they were a team that was already going to be battling with the Rays and the Yankees for that division, and if their two big free agent signings of this offseason are missing, a full season, and then however long Springer misses with this oblique strain, it's going to be very hard for them to keep up in that division.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, but we'll jump to a little bit of good news, and this is one that we've been dealing with since the playoffs last year, and that's Denilson Lamet. Sounds like he's going to make his Cactus League debut tomorrow versus the Giants. He's already been pitching in some simulated games. But this is good news, especially for all Padres fans. If Denilson Lamet is able to get onto the mound right now, then maybe you're looking at him only missing a month or so of the season as he starts building himself up. And that's a big arm that can go into that rotation.
Oh yeah, Denelson Lamet had a really good season last year. He's a good pitcher. Um, you know, he had been throwing a lot of fastballs, I believe, in his simulated games. So if he's able to throw some sliders now, um, that's a big deal for him and his recovery. Hopefully, he comes out and is able to pitch well against some good competition tomorrow. And hopefully he ends up getting back into that rotation pretty quickly because without Clevenger in there you have a couple other guys. You have Snell and Darvish, but you really want to get Lamette back as soon as you can. Because I don't know how great their depth is in the rotation. So I don't know how great Chris Paddock is going to do, um, but definitely, and Musgrove is kind of a. I think Musgrove's going to do well, but he's a little bit of a wild card still too. So you hope to see Lamette get back pretty early, and I think he will. And I think if he comes back, I think he's really, really good. I don't think last season, even with the 60-game season, I don't think it was a fluke that he was one of the better pitchers in the National League. So very interesting though. Hopefully he gets back soon, and we'll see though.
Yeah, we'll see. Even as a Dodger fan, he's tore us up. But I definitely want to see him back out there. He's very fun to watch for the skill set that he has. So, we had someone sign an extension this week, and that's Salvador Perez. He re-signed with the Kansas City Royals on a 4-year, $82 million deal with a club option that could take the deal to 5 years, $91.5 million overall.
Yeah, this is an interesting deal. If you look at Salvador Perez's numbers as a big leaguer, they're okay. They're not great, um, but you know he's a good defensive catcher. Sometimes he's been a great defensive catcher. In 2014 or 2013, he was probably the best defensive catcher in the league. Put up 3.5 wins above replacement, but um, he's a free swinger, strikes out a ton. So at the plate, it's just okay. This past year, put up a career best line in 37 games, but he hit real well, hit 333, but he also had a BABIP that was about 75 or 100 points above his career numbers. So he really had some luck on balls in play. Very low walk rate in his career. He's got a 3.4% career walk rate. So at the plate, he's very average. In fact, his WRC plus for his career is 99. I mean, he's the definition of average at the plate. Defensively, at times he's been really good. There's been a couple seasons where he wasn't great, but I expect to see him, and he's also a catcher that plays almost every day. So I expect to see him, you know, be a solid catcher for them going forward. And catchers are not a dime a dozen at all. They're tough to come by, good catchers. And Salvador Perez is one that has great leadership, is able to lead his staff. And with their young pitchers coming up like Brady Singer, uh, Bubik, a couple of their bullpen arms like Stalmont, they definitely need that leadership behind the plate to kind of guide these pitchers through games. And I think that's something that Salvador Perez definitely brings them. So I think this is a pretty good signing for them. 4 years, 82 million, maybe a little high money wise for a guy with his skill set, but I think for them it makes sense. He's beloved there, and they get a club option on the end of it, which is obviously a good thing for the team. So it's a good deal.
Yeah, and he'll be right around 34, 35 when this contract ends. So he's not going to be pushing too far into that, past his prime area. And like you said, for a young team that's still building up, to have that veteran presence locked in behind the plate, especially for your young pitchers, it's very big.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and jump over to our prediction part of this episode. We're going to give you each division and how we think it'll break down finishing position wise. We'll give you our awards, and then we'll give you who we think our wild card teams are, just because we already have the divisions, and most likely it's going to be two divisions that whoever doesn't win, it's going to be the wild card team, anyways. The NL Central pretty much isn't going to have two teams in it this year. So, well, who do you have for the NL East? How do you have that breaking down?
So in the NL East, I have up on the top the Atlanta Braves. I like some of the additions they brought back. They brought in this. Brought back. Spoiler alert, but they brought in this offseason. I really like Charlie Morton. He's looked good this spring. His velocity seems to be back. Last year it took him a little bit of time to get going, but once he got going a little bit, he looked like the pitcher that we saw in 2019 and 2018. That was really, really, really good. Um, so I think that's going to end up being a good signing. The thing I like the most about the Braves, though, and aside from bringing back Marcelo Ozuna, is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and they're going to be right now. They're going to be a good team if nothing goes well for with these areas, because you got third base with Austin Riley, who's kind of a question mark. You've got center field with Christian Pache, which is kind of a question mark, and then you've got a couple of the back end of rotation guys who are a little bit of a question mark. So, but everywhere else, you got great players. You got Ronald Acuna, you got Freddie Freeman, you got Ozzy Albies, you got Darno catching at shortstop. You got Dansby Swanson, who's seemed to be on a breakout tear last year. Ozuna playing left field. So, you feel like if all the things go poorly for the Braves, they're still a good team. But those guys that I mentioned, the question marks, they have really high upside. Like Ian Anderson has really high upside, even though we're not sure that he's going to be great this year. You've got Soroka coming back. If he doesn't pitch at all, you probably still got a good rotation. But Soroka's got high upside. He was really good in 2019. And then you look at center field, Pache's got really high upside. So I think if everything goes poorly, they'll be pretty good. But I think one or two of those pieces, just by a law of averages, are going to go really, really well. And they all have high ceilings. So I like the Braves in first. I actually wrote down records with mine, so nobody criticized me for them not adding up correctly, but I tried. But I have the Braves winning about 95 games this year, so I like the Braves to win the division.
Yeah, I have the Braves right up there as well. I mean, everything you just said. The Braves, I mean, they took the Dodgers to 7 games last year, and all they did was improve their team. You bring in Charlie Morton, you're going to get Mike Soroka back. You're going to have another year of Acuna developing. You're going to have a year of Pache probably going to play a little bit more. You're going to have Ozzy Albies being back for a full season. You're going to have Dansby Swanson hopefully taking a little bit more of a step and becoming more consistent. Are you going to get MVP level Freddie Freeman like last year? Probably not to that same level, but Freddie Freeman's still one of the best players in MLB. Um, so this is a very, very good team. Their bullpen could probably be a question mark just because Melanson and Shane Green and guys like that aren't there anymore. So I mean, are they? You have Will Smith and you have Chris Martin, but who else are you going to rely on in that bullpen to get some big outs? I know you have AJ Minter and
Yeah, yeah, and that's probably the biggest question mark for me. The thing that I think is a hope from the Braves organization is that a couple of these guys they've had all these pitching prospects for a long time. I think their hope is that one or two of like Tukey Toussaint or Kyle Wright, a couple of those guys who have kind of flirted with being in the rotation but haven't been able to stay consistent could develop there because they have great stuff, could develop into impact relievers. But some of their offseason pickups were okay, like, and they've looked good in the spring. But that's definitely the question mark. I think the biggest question mark is that bullpen.
yeah,
So
that's a question mark for a lot of teams in the Major League Baseball.
absolutely,
So every team should be questioning their bullpen. So if that's the only thing the Braves really have to worry about, and maybe third base. I mean, that could be a place where I see them making a move later in the season for. Um, is depends on what Austin Riley and like Johan Camargo and people like that are doing at third base for the Braves. But um, second for on my end at least for second in the division, as I have the New York Mets. Um, Jacob Degrom is just he's the best pitcher in baseball right now. You bring in a guy like Francisco Lindor, you bring in Carlos Carrasco when you get him back. You still have Michael Conforto. You brought in James McCann to kind of help solve your catching issues. I mean, he's not the best out there, but he's still going to be probably a pretty solid guy that you got. Um, the biggest thing is how are they going to fit everybody in? Because we don't have the DH as of yet. There's still some rumblings that could happen, maybe, but as of right now, you're going to have to try and find at bats for Dominic Smith somewhere, and that's going to be in the outfield because you're not going to put him at first base and take Pete Alonso out. This is a very good team. I feel like that can. I don't think they're going to be able to push the Braves quite to the limit for that division, but it's going to be a very, very close race, probably within, I'd say, 4 to 5 games.
yeah, and I would agree with that for the most part. I think the Mets are a really good team. I think Jacob Degrom is the best pitcher in baseball, and I don't think it's really all that close right now. Um, I think that you look at some of their lineup, they got some good hitters. I worry big time about them defensively because that ends up costing you a lot of runs when you're as bad defensively as they are. They added Francisco Lindor, which helps their defense immensely, but if you look around the diamond, I mean, first base, Pete Alonso is not good defensively. Second base, Jeff McNeil, very, very average defensively. JD Davis at third, not good defensively. Dom Smith at left field, are you kidding? He's terrible out there. Michael Conforto can hold his own in right, but he's not great. And then in center, you know, they had flirted with adding a bunch of these, top free agents like Springer, but they never did. They got like Jonathan VR and Jake Marisnick and
They got Kevin Pillar,
Kevin Pillar, and Kevin
Nimmo.
Pillar's a good defender, but either way, I mean,
They
and
got Brandon
catcher,
Nimmo
I mean,
too.
Brandon Nimmo, yeah, but none of these guys are good defensive players. And the catching, I mean, James McCann is not great as a defensive player. I did not especially like that signing for them. So, but I mean, I think their offense is going to be good. I think when Jacob Degrom pitches, your defense isn't going to matter because he's going to strike everyone out. But sometimes defense is going to matter for this team because when you look past Jacob Degrom,
Well,
You look at
Stroman.
Marcus Stroman's he's not a strikeout pitcher. I mean, that ball's gonna get put in play against him a lot. And as we've seen in the past, a lot of his skill set is tied to to BABIP and how his grounders are fielded. So you look at maybe and then you look beyond that in the rotation, and you just don't know. I mean, you don't how is Carrasco going to pitch this year a lot? Is he going to be healthy? What's he going to get you if he is healthy? Noah Syndergaard, how's his recovery going from Tommy John? And then at number 5, I mean, you got a guy who wasn't really a high-rated prospect last year, but had a pretty decent rookie year in David Peterson. So, I mean, there's definitely some big time question marks for the Mets, but this is a very good team that I have them winning about 89 to 90 games. So I think they push the Braves close to the end of the season, put a little bit of doubt in there. If everything goes wrong for the Braves with their question marks, the bullpen's bad, third base doesn't work out, uh, center field doesn't work out, then the Mets could definitely push the Braves. They're good enough for that, but I do have the Mets in second place. So
Who do you got in third?
third place, I'm looking at the Phillies in third place. I think the top of their rotation is really solid with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. Although I don't think it's quite as good as either the top two in the division in the rotation, or fourth place in the rotation for that matter, and the division for that matter. But their lineup, they've got some good hitters in that lineup. I think they're going to be a little inconsistent in their lineup. Bryce Harper is going to be solid most all the year. He'll have streaks where he looks like an MVP, but he'll have other times where he's just pretty good. Um, but Reese Hoskins is a real inconsistent hitter. You look at some of their other pieces, and I mean JT Realmuto is a really good catcher, but Gregorius at short is solid. But Alec Boehm, what's he going to get you? His defense isn't very good at third. Um, and you got a couple pieces in the outfield like in center field. I don't even know who's going to play center field. So, um,
Sounds
you
like
know,
Odubel Herrera
yeah, and you don't know what you're going to get from him. He hadn't played in a couple of years, and if not him, it's probably like Roman Quinn or something. So,
or Scott Kingery.
or Scott Kingery, and Scott Kingery has not been good the last couple of years. So
No.
he's shown some flashes at times, but it'll be very interesting to see what the Phillies do. The bullpen is going to be the biggest problem for them. Their bullpen is just awful still, even though they added Archie Bradley. I mean, they're just bad. So
Yeah,
um,
I have the Phillies in third as well, and it's pretty much a team that they brought everybody that they had last year. They brought that back, and then they added Archie Bradley, Matt Moore, and Jose Alvarado. And I mean, Archie Bradley and Jose Alvarado to that bullpen is nice, but when you don't have a bullpen in the first place, and those are the only two guys you get in there, it's just like, okay, you put a band aid over a wound that needs stitches. Like
yeah,
you aren't doing much to help that point. And like you said, they're going to be streaky. I have them as third place right now. If everybody's on a good streak, then they might be able to push the Mets. But if everybody's on a bad streak, you could see them fall down to fourth in this division. It's
yeah,
just, and their defense is atrocious. I mean, you're talking about the Mets defense. I mean, this Phillies defense was the worst defense in Major League Baseball last year, and one of the worst defenses in the history of Major League Baseball, especially up the middle from shortstop, second base, center field. And they didn't really do anything to help that out. I mean, you're still going to be playing Gene Segura, or you're going to be playing Scott Kingery at second, or maybe Kingery in the outfield. And it's just you didn't do anything to improve that. All that infield, all around is really bad at defense outside of JT Realmuto. And their defense, in the outfield, who's going to play center? We don't know. None of them are really good defenders. McCutcheon isn't what he used to be. Harper's still really good as a defensive right fielder, but at that point, it's just like, okay, you have one good defender on your team. So it, I don't have high expectations for the Phillies. I just put them in third because I think that Bryce Harper will have a really good year, and that if he gets hot, he can help carry them above the Marlins and the Nats.
yeah. I mean, they still have a talented offense, and the top two in their rotation is really solid. So yeah, I do think that Um, they have the potential. I think the top 4 in this division, or the top 3 in this division, have the potential to win the division.
Yeah,
And I think number 4 has the potential to be a wild card team. But the Phillies, I mean, I have them third, pretty distantly behind the Mets and the Braves. I have them in just over 81 games, a little over 500, probably like 83 and 79 type season. Um, I think they're going to be good, but they're not quite to the level of the others in this division. So
Well, who do you got in fourth?
Fourth place, I have the Nationals. I really don't believe in the Nationals team this year. I know Scherzer and Strasburg are really good, but Patrick Corbin seemed to really take a step back last year. Scherzer is finally showing some signs of aging, although he's still really, really good. I don't want to sit here. I'm not sitting here and saying that Scherzer's not a great pitcher because he is still, but he's not a every year Cy Young candidate that he was. And Strasburg, you just don't know how healthy he's going to stay. Behind that, you've got a bad bullpen. You've got a horrible, horrible rest of your rotation. I mean, you look at like Eric Fede has not been good. You got like John Lester is not as a shell of his former self. I don't think he's going to be very good. You look at, I mean, whoever else, Joe Ross hadn't pitched in 2 years. I mean, whoever else they might run out there, they have not shown very much there. And then their lineup, I feel like they just threw some bandages on it. You got Juan Soto, who's great. You got Trey Turner, who's great. But I mean, Victor Robles is a great defensive center fielder. He has not shown any progress at the plate since he's been in the big leagues. You go around the diamond. I mean, Schwarber, he's probably going to hit a lot of home runs, but he's not going to hit, you know, he probably won't hit his weight. And then you've got, Josh Bell is very inconsistent and a poor defensive player. Um, Although he can get on a hot streak and hit some home runs. And then you just got a bunch of old guys. So, I mean, I'm not very high on the Nationals at all. I think they're going to finish below 500. I think if things go right, if Scherzer is Scherzer from the past 5 years and Strasburg is healthy, you know, and then some of these guys in their lineup end up having big years, like Josh Bell is like his 2019 first half Josh Bell, and Schwarber finally figures it out fully, and Soto and Turner go on a tear. I could see them making the playoffs, but because there's still talent here, and in any other division, I might pick them to win the Central, but I just don't see them being able to beat the three teams ahead of them right now.
See, I got a little bit flopped. So I'm actually going with the Marlins in fourth. Um, I'm really, like you said, I'm not high on the Nationals at all this year. I just don't trust that Steven Strasburg will stay healthy. Max Scherzer, I mean, while he's still really good, he's also started getting that injury bug hit him this past couple years. Patrick Corbin's injuries have started, or not injuries, but his just inconsistency is starting to become for longer stretches of time. It used to be I'm going to have 1 to 2 bad starts, and I'll go for 4 to 5 decent to really good starts, and then we'll just start that. Well, it's more like I'm going to have 3 bad starts, and then 2 good starts, and then 3 bad starts and 1 good start. Um, and just the depth behind that, I don't really like the Nationals' depth at pitching wise. Lester's okay. Joe Ross, I mean, what are you going to get out of him? And I just don't trust it. But the Marlins, I mean, I really like what the Marlins have done this year, especially after what they showed last year. They didn't push all in for it, but they did bring in some solid pieces. I mean, you bring in Adam Duvall to help that team. You bring in Anthony Bass to go into that bullpen. You bring in a guy like who was the other one I saw? They brought in. Oh, they traded for Dylan Floro. That's right, from the Dodgers. They traded for John Curtis to go into that bullpen. I mean, they just strengthened their bullpen a little bit more, and then you're taking that. You're putting your shoulders on that next step of Sandy Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez, Pablo Lopez, and then your batters just to keep getting better. Brian Anderson's probably one of the most underrated hitters in the majors, and I mean, he's so good. People don't understand how good he really is. Jorge Alfaro, he took a really big step last year for the Marlins. Um, and I just like the way that team plays, and I have more confidence in the young and upcoming team than the Nationals trying to hold on to what they had a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I do. I agree with your points on the Marlins. I just don't think they're quite there yet. I think Sixto Sanchez. I think teams started to figure him out a little bit at the end of the season, and in his last few starts, aside from his playoff start against the Cubs, he really didn't do all that well. I think he's going to have to make some adjustments. Look at Pablo Lopez and Sandy Alcantara, and I tell you, those are two really good pitchers. They're great. I think both of them are probably easily number twos in the big leagues. I don't know if either one of them's quite a number one, but you go into their bullpen, and like you say, they did do some things to strengthen it. I don't think they really have any kind of big time relievers out there, but they've got some pieces that are more interesting than the ones they had last year. If you look at their lineup, I think that's where you're going to see the concerns for me. They've got a couple guys back, like Jesus Aguilar. A full season of Starling Marte is going to help. Brian Anderson, as you mentioned, I've liked him for a long time. Garrett Cooper's pretty solid, but there's just a lot of question marks here. I mean, Alfaro is a strikeout machine, and last year, he probably improved a little bit, but a lot of it might have been some small sample size, BABIP luck. You look at some of their other pieces, like are you going to get a huge year out of John Birdie? Are you going to get a huge year out of Corey Dickerson again? I mean, Corey Dickerson's fine, but um, I just Adam Duvall is kind of a enigma to me. He could go on a tear and hit 15 home runs in 2 months, or he could strike out 200 times next year. It's just hard to say. So there's some interest here. They're way more interesting than they have been. I do think they're a year or two away. I think they're going to add some pieces in the near future. As in, they've got some good prospects. I mean, you look at JJ Bleday, he's a
Yep.
top prospect. Monte Harrison, he got a taste of the big leagues last year, but I think maybe a year of seasoning for him would in AAA is going to help. And they got a bunch of other guys down
I think,
in the
uh,
upper
and
minors.
and I think Jazz Chisholm should be up this year.
Oh yeah, Jazz Chisholm. He's got a chance to be up this year, and he played on the big league team a pretty good bit last year. But some of these guys I think still need a little bit of seasoning. That they played in the big league team by necessity last year because of the COVID situation they had. But I mean, the Marlins are going to be pretty good. They're going to be a dangerous team. You're not going to, if you're in a pennant race at the end of the year, you're not going to want to play them. But with all these young pieces, and there's just so many question marks here, and I don't know if their offense is going to be good enough for them to really contend for anything more than just trying to upset a team's season. So I have them in fifth. I don't think they're. I have the Nationals ahead of them just because I feel like the Nationals have the potential to be a playoff team. Like they have the pieces there. The Marlins not quite there yet, but I think in the next couple of years, if they're able to keep everyone together, they could be.
Yeah, and like I don't think the Marlins are there yet either. But I just have more faith in them now. As that young team trying to go for it a little bit. I mean, they're not going for it all out, but I mean, some nice additions to a team that they snuck into the playoffs because of the expanded playoffs last year, and they did better than what they were supposed to do. But I think that might give them a little bit more life. Where the Nationals are trying to, find the magic of, okay, well, we've lost Anthony Rendon, we lost Bryce Harper. Yes, we have Juan Soto and Trey Turner. Our pitchers are starting to age. The injuries are starting to hit them more. I just, it's hard for me to think that the Nationals are going to be anything this year. I mean, like you said, Josh Bell. I mean, is he going to be 2019 first half Josh Bell, or is he going to be the Josh Bell who's not been really good at all? Um, so they're an interesting that 4 or 5. I mean, that you can put them either way. I think that's how it's going to go is one way or the other. But there's a clear separation of the top 3 teams in this division. I
Yeah,
think.
for sure. So,
Uh,
so now we'll move on and go on to the next division here. I think our analyst predictions were pretty similar, but I think we might have some disagreement here on the National League Central. Who do you have? Who do you have taken the Central there, Damien?
I don't think we're going to have too much disagreements. I have the Milwaukee Brewers winning the NL Central this year.
Okay.
I really like uh, Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns at the top of that rotation. Corbin Burns, he struggled a little bit so far this spring training with just command wise, but he showed a lot last year. It looks like Christian Yelich is going to bounce back, especially with him getting that in-game footage back. I think he'll be, back to maybe not MVP Yelly level, but he'll be pretty back to a really, really good player. Um, I like Keston Hira as long as he's not playing defense. He's going to have to, but they're starting to move him to first base a little bit more. I just think the Brewers are a really sneaky team. Their bullpen, when you have Devin Williams and Josh Hader being able to shut that down, um, I don't think they're going to be very flashy. I don't think that the Central is all that strong, anyways. Any of these top 3 teams could really win the division, but I really like what the Brewers have put together and how they're looking so far.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I have the Brewers winning it as well. I have them at about 87 wins. I like that top of the rotation. Like you said, those are two of the better pitchers out there, and I think they've done enough adding to maybe be able to scrape together enough of the rest of the rotation to steal some games there. But you look down at their lineup, if Christian Yelich bouncing back is probably the big deal there, but you've got some other pieces too. I think Colton Wong was a pretty sneakily good signing.
Yeah.
And you've got Keston Hira, I think is going to have a pretty good year at first base. Um, you know, they added Jackie Bradley Jr.
Yep.
Into the outfield, and I think that was a pretty nice signing. I think he'll do well in Milwaukee. You look at they've got some pretty solid pieces around the diamond as shortstop. You got Orlando Arcia. Um, I think he's a pretty solid player. So I don't think their lineup is great. I think they're going to need some help in the lineup to win the division. But I think that they might be able to get that. And with this being such a weak division, I think that you're going to see the Milwaukee Brewers have a good chance to win this one. But this division really is a crapshoot. So
Yeah, at second, I have the Chicago Cubs. And this is, let me say, it's not a very big margin at all. I think that this is going to go down to the last couple days of the season. Really, I just think that the major flaw for the Cubs is going to be the bullpen and the back end of their rotation. When you trade you Darvish away, and I mean you bring in Zach Davies, Zach Davies and Kyle Hendricks. I mean, Kyle Hendricks is really good. Zach Davies is really solid. Um, and just overall, like, are you going to trade Chris Bryant? Are you going to trade Javi Baez? I mean, what's happening with Anthony Rizzo? Um, you know, you brought in Jock Peterson. You're going to guarantee him playing every day. He hasn't had that opportunity yet, so he could boom. He could bust in it. It's overall, is Jason Hayward going to be the Jason Hayward that we saw last year, who was really, really good, or is he going to kind of revert back to when he's an okay major league reliever, plays very solid defense, but at the plate, he's just not not what he was last year. Is Ian Happ going to take that next development? Who's going to be your second baseman? I mean, there's a lot of questions with this Cubs team. If the talent is there for sure. It's just, is everybody going to be able to play up to that level? Who are you going to trade anybody? Who are you going to be able to re-sign? There's a big cloud over this Cubs franchise with what's going to happen this next year or so, and I just wonder if that's going to come into the affect the way that they handle this season.
yeah, and I agree with a lot of that. I think the potential's there. There's just a lot of variables. I mean, Chris Bryant's got to be healthy. Uh, you've got to have Anthony Rizzo continue to play at a high level, which I think he will. But Javier Baez is very inconsistent at the plate. With his approach at the plate is atrocious. He's been able to, just based off of his pure talent, been able to hit the ball, hit well every now and then for an extended period. But he's just going to always be inconsistent with his current approach. He just swings so much. And you look at the outfield, and it's I think they're going to be good on offense. I really do. I mean, you look at the outfield, Jock Peterson. I don't believe Jock Peterson against lefties is a good option, but he's going to crush against righties. Got in the outfield, Jason Hayward's going to be good. They'll find somebody that breaks out, probably plays second or center field or something. They got Nico Horner, who wasn't great last year, but he's a high rated prospect. David Bodie's still there. He could be a solid piece. Wilson Contreras is going to hit pretty well for a catcher. But I agree with you. The issue here is I think the issue is the rotation as much as the bullpen, but both of them are issues. The bullpen's a huge issue, and but the rotation. I mean, you got Hendricks is solid, but you also lose Lester, who wasn't great anymore, but he was still steady. If anything, you lose Quintana, who not like he had been banged up a little bit the last couple of years, but he was a part of what you expected the Cubs to be good. Um, but I mean, who are they going to start? Alec Mills is going to be their number three. I mean, uh, then you look at their bullpen, and I mean, there's just not much there. It's just, Andrew Chafin's
Yeah,
probably their best reliever. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you look at what they've done in the pitching staff, they brought in Brandon Workman in the bullpen. They brought in Jake Arrieta back for a
yeah, I mean,
renaissance type thing this year. They brought in Trevor Williams from the Pirates, who I think he could be really good. Um, he was okay on the Pirates. I think that he could be pretty decent on the Cubs. Cole Stewart, I mean, they agreed to, I think, a major league deal with him even. Outside of that, I mean, they really didn't do. I mean, along with Zach Davies, you traded some of your other people away. Dwayne Underwood was a guy that they traded away. Victor Carantini they traded away for the offensive side of the ball. Yu
Yeah.
Darvish, obviously. I don't know how to feel about what this team is going to be bullpen wise and just pitching staff in general.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of noise surrounding this team too with the upcoming off season, and I just don't know. It reminds me a little bit of back in maybe it was 2016 with the Royals or 2017 where they kind of were around 500 half the season. They still had a couple star players like Lorenzo Cain and Mustakas and a couple of those guys, but Alex Gordon, but they couldn't decide whether they wanted to go for it or not. That seems like what the Cubs have been this offseason. They haven't decided whether they're going to go for it. Because if they were going to go for it, then they shouldn't have traded Yu Darvish, and they shouldn't have traded Victor Caratini, and they shouldn't have released Kyle Schwarber. They should have just gone for it with their core and added to
Right.
it. But um, we'll see what happens. This screams team that if they're around 500 at the deadline's got decisions to make. But as of right now, I have them finished in second as well, about 86 wins, 85 wins. I think they're going to be within a game or two of the Brewers if they stick together. But following those two is the other team that I think is probably one of the three teams we have as potential champions of this division, and that would be for me the Cardinals. I think they just added Nolan Arenado, which is big. But I'm not a big believer in their rotation or bullpen at all. I don't really think Jack Flaherty's as good as a lot of people have given him credit for. And then behind him, you're going to miss Dakota Hudson for a while. And then you've got um, Kim back there in the in the starting rotation, who had a good ERA last year, but his peripherals were not good. And you got Miles Mikolas if he's healthy and effective. Who knows? Um, the bullpen, they've got a couple pieces there, but it's hard to say what they're going to give you. Carlos Martinez, what's he going to give you? Um, the lineup's got to be solid, but it's top heavy. As in, you got Arenado, you got uh, Paul Goldschmidt, and then you've got Paul DeYoung. So you've got a few good pieces there, but you know, I just you got in the rotation the old Adam Wainwright. I mean, it's hard to envision this team putting together a big time season this year. But with like I say, the state of this division, I think right around third place and within a game or two of the win of the division is probably accurate for them.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Cardinals at third too. There's plenty of question marks, like you said. Um, right now your second best starter is going to be Adam Wainwright. Um, Kim, I mean, we've talked about he's already been dealing with some stuff. I think Michaelis is also dealing with a little bit of injury stuff. He's been set back a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, obviously Dakota Hudson's going to be out for a while. Um, are, are you going to get anything out of Alex Reyes this year? I mean, is he going to be anything like a starter, or is he just going to be a bullpen guy? What are you doing with Carlos Martinez? I mean, is he going to be a bullpen guy? Or are you going to make him? Or is he going to be forced into the rotation because you have no other option? Um, obviously the trade for Nolan Arenado was a pretty big one to lock him in at third base with Paul Goldschmidt over at first base. But letting Colton Wong go, I think that's going to hurt them, especially defensively, quite a lot. I mean, he's a guy who could lock down that second base and sometimes in center field for them. And he was consistent at the plate. I mean, he wasn't great, but he was consistent. Um, Paul DeYoung, I mean, he can be good, but at the same time, he struggles quite often. You traded Dexter Fowler away, which he hadn't been much, but still, I mean, you're going. I think they're going to go with Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader, and I forget is
Dylan
Dylan
Carlson.
Carlson is he going to be up this year?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it'd be Dylan Carlson, and
You would think so. They feel like they've had another outfield prospect that I keep forgetting.
yeah,
They've been wanting to get right. It was Tyler O'Neill, and it was who was the other one? Dang it. Anyways, we'll think about it. But I mean, what's Jordan Hicks going to be? Is Austin Gomber going to be starting for you? I mean, this is all questions around this Cardinals team that it's just like it, it's too many questions to feel like they're to be confident in them. Um, Jack Flaherty, I think I think he's really good. Is he a top of the rotation starter? I think so. Is he one of the best starters in Major League Baseball? I don't think so. I mean, I think he's right in that kind of B to C tier, maybe. He's got a lot of development left to do still, I believe. He goes on stretches like that second half of 2019. He was amazing,
Yeah.
and then he came back 2020 and he really struggled. Now, was that the COVID
Yeah,
year or?
I think he's an upper tier number two. If I had to pick him at some people talk like he's a number one. I think he's an upper tier number two for a good team. You know.
Yeah, it's just there's so many questions around this team. That's kind of what I'm leading to. Is just so many questions around this team that it's hard to pick them to do anything successful. You know, with the Brewers, we were like, okay, you have Yelich, you brought in some decent pieces this year, good. The Cubs, it's like, okay, you have
You still
basically
have
the
all
remnants
these
still of a
core
of a World
players. Yeah.
Series team. It's like the Cardinals, it's like, okay, you've traded a lot, or you've traded to get Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, but what else do you have? And Jack Flaherty. I mean, if you want to throw him into that conversation, but outside of those, it's like you don't have anything else really.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely, they can still battle for this division, especially if Arenado gets back to 2019 Arenado, 2018 Arenado. Um, but it's all question marks. Um, I think we both have the 9 and 10, or the not 9 and 10, the 4 and 5 in this division, with the Reds and the Pirates. I think finishing fourth and fifth.
Yeah, and for the Reds, I think you still got your two of your top arms in your rotation. Sonny Gray, even though there's question marks about his health at the start of the season, he'll be back at some point and he'll be solid. And then you got Castillo as your number two or number one. I think Castillo's great. So you got two really good pitchers there. The rest of it, I mean, you still got Tyler Mahle, and he's shown flashes of being a pretty solid pitcher. Um, your bullpen, I think they're underrated. I think a lot of people are going to see, without Rosell Iglesias, are going to think, wow, that bullpen's trash now. But they've still got Amir Garrett, who at times looks pretty good from the left side. Is like kind of a lefty specialist. I think Lucas Sims is actually pretty good. He's made some adjustments as he's gotten to Cincinnati that have improved him. I think the lineup, it's a lot of question marks there. Are you going to get a big season from Suarez again, or are you going to get what he showed last year, which is just a real high strikeout, but he'll hit home runs every now and then, but he's going to strike out a ton and not really be consistent. What are you going to get from Joey Votto? He's missed a lot of the spring with COVID. Is he going to come back and is he going to have a little bit of a rebound year, or is he pretty much done? I mean, you've got some other pieces out there, like is Senzel gonna break out? Is he finally going to show the talent that he has, or is he going to have another year where he's battling injuries and inconsistency? Are you going to have Shogo Akiyama? How's he going to do out there? And is he going to be able to build off of a pretty decent rookie year? Jesse Winker, I think, is going to hit pretty well and not defend great. This team has some potential. Tucker Barnhart's really good defensively behind the plate, not a great hitter. They got some potential. I think they could maybe sneak in there if everything goes right. If they have a couple breakout players, they could maybe sneak into the top of that division. But I have them just right around or below 500 right now, just a few games back of the other teams here.
Yeah, right around that. I think they're below a 500 team, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um, and the Pirates, I mean, they're going to be one of the worst
yeah,
teams in Major League
yeah.
Baseball.
The
There's not really much to be excited
Yeah,
about with that Pirates
Pirates
team.
are going to be terrible. I think it will be interesting to watch a couple of their players, like Brian Hayes, though. So
Yeah. Well, we'll jump over to the NL West. This is a two-horse race. I mean, we in some order it's going to be Dodgers and Padres. I believe. I mean, I have it as the Dodgers winning the division, and the Padres is going to be one of those wild card teams. Um, yeah, I just think that the Dodgers. I mean, they really didn't get worse at all, and they upgraded that pitching staff, and they got the depth of it. Bringing in Trevor Bauer, you're going to push guys like Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May probably to the bullpen. Um, you lose guys like a Jock Peterson and a Kike Hernandez, which those are still going to be very big losses. But the Dodgers have always been about that depth. So that's going to get guys like Edwin Rios and Matt Beatty, and Zach McKinstry, guys who weren't able to get so much playing time last year or the past couple years. They're going to get more playing time. It looks like Gavin Lux is going to get the full time role at second base now. Uh, so I just don't think that this Dodgers team has many holes in it. I mean, I think they even improved the bullpen, especially being able to throw those starters down into the bullpen with it. And I just don't know where they would really question this team. I think the Padres' depth between their pitching staff and their bullpens really what's going to hurt them and allow the Dodgers that advantage to still win this division.
Yeah, and I think the Dodgers have a really good shot. I was 50-50 really between these two, but play devil's advocate, I was going to go with the Padres. I feel like the Padres have a higher upside in a regular season format. I think if you look at the Padres back end of their rotation, there's a couple of some question marks there, but their offense is so good. I think the Dodgers at times can be a little inconsistent in the regular season. You see some of their guys have pretty high strikeout rates. Guys like Cody Bellinger will have stretches where he's striking out a lot, especially after watching him last year. Some like Max Muncy, guy who can strike out a good bit at times. You got, I just I feel like there's going to be a aura around this Padres team to a certain level that they're going to do really well. And I don't know why I feel that way, but I think if you look at their rotation, you got Darvish and you've got Lamet when he comes back, which sounds like it's going to be pretty early in the season compared to what we were kind of expecting. I think what's his name, Musgrove's going to do well for them. You know, there's some pieces still there. I mean, you might even see Mackenzie Gore come up this year. That would be a big piece for them. And then their lineup's got so many talented players. They're great defensively. I worry a tiny bit about the Dodgers. Some of their players being, with their aging. You look at Kershaw. He hasn't in a full season. Last year he was great, but it was a shortened season. Over a full season stretches, he's battled some of those back problems, and I worry just a little bit about Kershaw and being able to stay healthy. I worry a little bit about the back end of the bullpen. I think Trinan's pretty good, but Kenley Jansen didn't look great last year. I think Gratterall is going to eventually take over that role, but is Gratterall going to be like a superstar reliever, or is he just going to be a good reliever? And then I think you look at some of their players in their lineup too, like Justin Turner or Max Muncy or somebody maybe aging a little bit. But like I say, sometimes the biggest reason I think I made this pick of the Padres is because a lot of times you come back for a second year and the Dodgers, right after a World Series, there could be that little bit of a World Series hangover to a certain level, and you see it a lot of times. You saw it with the Red Sox a couple years ago with basically the same team. They didn't make the playoffs. You saw it with you see it all the time, and I think the Dodgers are such a talented team that they'll be able to overcome that in their record and stuff. But I think it might be enough for the Padres to be able to sneak in there and win the division. Although, spoiler alert, I do have the Dodgers going a long way in the postseason. So, um, but I do think the Padres are number one for me, just for whatever reason. Kind of a bold pick, but
I mean, like you said, there's gonna be an aura around that Padres team. They're so fun. That's the thing is that I hate that they're in our division and that I have to root against them to not do good because they're a team that you want to root for, especially if you're a fan of a team not in this division. The Padres are hard to root against. I mean, it's just I I guess part of it for me is that we've seen the Dodgers be there for. I mean, they're the guys who have been around. I mean, 8 straight division titles. It's a little bit of okay. Show me, Padres. You did good last year, but show me that next step. Show me you're ready for that. Um, so maybe that's kind of that. And obviously, I have a little bit of Dodger bias there. Not at all.
yeah. Some of the
Yeah.
guys you mentioned that you're talking about them getting more playing time, like Matt Beatty. I'm not a huge I'm not super high on him. Stuff like that. I
Well,
mean,
Matt Beatty. I mean, he hasn't got a full run, but from
yeah.
what we've seen about him, I mean, he's I'm saying Matt Beatty in relative of okay, can he give you similar production to what a guy you were bringing up in
Well,
the
like
depth was
Kike
last year?
Hernandez,
No, I don't think he's Kike Hernandez.
right.
Um,
But I'm just saying, that's who he'd have to be replacing is Kike Hernandez. You know, I'm not sitting here saying that they've got worse. I think they
yeah,
probably even got better a little bit. But I'm just thinking that if you
yeah,
look at
and And
If
then
you look at the main thing for me just is that kind of World Series hangover type thing. But
and that could be real. I mean,
yeah,
we've seen it over and over. It's going to be interesting to see, and this division is going to be a dogfight. Like those 18 games that we're getting between the Padres and Dodgers this year is going to be, World Series level games. I think. I mean, the intensity alone is going to make it feel like a playoff game,
yeah,
just between the fans, let alone what the teams are actually doing.
yeah.
So we kind of have a little flip flop here. We both have the Rockies in the bottom of the division,
Yes, very
but
much so.
I'm going to go with the Diamondbacks finishing third in this division, and then the Giants finishing fourth in the division.
Yeah, I
Um,
have.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I have the Giants third and the Diamondbacks fourth. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that I think that you're going to get a little bit more of a bounce back from Cattell Marte. I like what Cole Calhoun did last year. David Peralta's still really good. When Zach Gallen comes back, you're going to have a full season of Zach, or how much ever of him to improve on what he did last year. I think Luke Weaver can have a little bit more of a bounce back. I don't think he's as bad as he was last year. I don't think he's as good as I think what his 2019 or 2018 was, but I don't think that Giants team is going to be a team that they're at the end of the run and they're starting to hit that reset button. I kind of feel like, they still have Belt, they still have Crawford, you still have Posey coming back this year, but you got a Johnny Cueto on the last year of his deal that you're most likely going to trade. You sign guys like Alex Wood to 1 year deals. I think the Giants are more of a team like, oh, we're going to be decent and then try and trade the people off at the deadline, where the Diamondbacks are going to be like, well, we have our team. This is who it's going to be, and we're just going to go forward with that.
Yeah, and you know, I think the biggest thing for me with the Giants are they scream average. Like they're not great and they're not bad. Like Buster Posey at this stage of his career screams average. He's still going to be a decent defender. He can't play every day at catcher. He's going to hit decently. He's going to hit for some contact. He's not going to hit for much power. He screams average. Brandon Belt, first baseman, screams average to me. He's going to have a 270, 350, 470 type slash line, and he's going to hit pretty well. He's going to play average defense for first base. He's going to be about a 2-win player. He's going to be average. You look at uh, Brandon Crawford. He's going to play good defense at shortstop. He's going to hit okay for a shortstop. He's going to be average. Mike Yastrzemski, I think, is a guy who has impressed me a lot. Um, I'm really high on him. I think the rotation, you look at like Kevin Gossman made some strides last year. He's back for them. Alex Wood, I think it's a good signing if he can stay healthy. Like you said, Johnny Cueto is still there. He's going to be an average pitcher. Their bullpen has some somewhat interesting pieces. They're not great, but you might even sometime this year have Joey Bart start to kind of figure it out at the major league level. You got some high level prospects like him in there. They still have Evan Longoria, right?
Yes, they do.
So yeah, I mean, you still got a guy who could be a pretty solid player at third base. So I mean, this is a team that they have a lot of veteran players. I think they're just a very average team that will. I have them. I wrote down on my thing. I have them 81 and 81. I just think they're perfectly in the middle. But they're not going to be anywhere near the Dodgers and the Padres. But
No.
they're also just not bad. So
Yeah. I mean, I think you could flip flop those two either way,
you maybe could. The Diamondbacks don't. The biggest thing about the Diamondbacks that worries me is their bullpen. I think their bullpen's horrible.
oh yeah,
So
it
you
is.
and then their rotations really only got one or two guys who have some form of upside to them right now at this stage. With Gallen and maybe Weaver. But their bullpen's bad, and then their lineup's got a lot of holes in it. I mean, Cattell Marte could take his have his rebound this year, and I think he will. Cole Calhoun showed some strides last year. Christian Stewart, I believe is his name, or Walker. Christian
Christian
Walker is the
Walker.
one on the Diamond. I always get those two confused. Christian Stewart, obviously playing on the Tigers,
Yeah.
but I like these guys for the Diamondbacks, but I just don't think they have quite as much as especially with Zach Gallen being out for an extended period. I just don't think they have quite as much as the Giants do, especially in the way of veteran players. And then obviously we both just wanted to touch on the Rockies real quick. We both have them number 5. But there could be some interesting players here. I think their pitching with Herman Marquez is going to be an interesting guy to watch. If I was the Rockies, I'd trade him immediately because I think the Rockies are going to be a pretty good amount of time away from contending, and Herman Marquez is very valuable. I think he's great. And then they've also got Trevor Story, who's going into a contract year,
Trade him
and
too.
they ought to trade him. But he could put up huge numbers this year. The pressure's all off. I could see him putting up a huge season going into his contract year, and then you also have a couple guys that are interesting like Brandon Rogers and Garrett Hampson that are young guys that you'd like to see what kind of strides they can take this year for the Rockies. So there's going to be some interesting things to watch with the Rockies, even though they're going to battle the Pirates for the worst team in the National League for sure. So
Yeah. Um, like you said, the Rockies are just not good. They
yeah,
should trade Marquez and Story right away.
yeah,
I mean, to me, and just hit the full reset button. I mean, you can't do anything
yeah.
else after trading your face your franchise like Nolan Arenado. So, but let's go ahead and jump down to who we have on our awards predictions, and I'll let you go ahead and go first.
Yeah, so this mine will be pretty quick because I got two of them. Spoiler alert: I got one guy winning two of the awards, but I have for my rookie of the year. I actually have Ian Anderson. I wasn't sure. I had asked Damien before the show if he was still a rookie because last year, obviously, he pitched in six. He started 6 games in the regular season, and I wasn't sure because of how last year was a limited season if they still counted that as being part of his rookie status or if they like prorated it or whatever. But um, it sounds like he is a rookie. I really like his potential. He's looked great this spring. The other day, he had 9 strikeouts in 4 1/3 innings in his last spring tune-up. So I really like his potential. I think he's going to have a breakout year for the Braves. Um, and then I've got for my Cy Young and MVP, I've got Jacob DeGrom. I think Jacob DeGrom is the best pitcher in baseball, and by a pretty good margin. If you went off of last year's stats alone, you could maybe argue for Shane Bieber, but I mean, Jacob DeGrom's got the track record. He's come out this spring looking the best he's ever looked, which is pretty insane to me because he's been the best pitcher in baseball for 2 or 3 years now. And this guy is insane. He won 2 Cy Youngs in a row the last 2 full seasons we had. Last year, there's no doubt in my mind he would have won the Cy Young if they played a full season because he was really coming along in the second half of the shortened season last year. Um, this guy's going to be the reason the Mets for me in the playoffs. It's going to be because Jacob DeGrom is so dominant in every one of his outings that they're able to win a lot of his starts, and whether he gets the wins or not, they're going to win a lot of his starts, and he's going to be the reason they make the playoffs. So. Especially with some of these pitching injuries that we're hearing about now, so I have Degrom being the Cy Young and MVP.
Yeah, and for my um, awards, I went with Brian Hayes for my Rookie of the Year. I just, especially with how we had the shortened season last year, I'm not sure how they're going to push the pitchers that much. I don't know how many innings Ian Anderson has really thrown throughout his minor league career through full seasons. So it could be a point where they try and limit him as much as they can. Especially maybe spot start him every once in a while and give him a day off or an extra blow during the rotation one time. Brian Hayes, he'll play every day for the Pirates just because, I mean, he's going to be their best option that they have. He's shown flashes at times over the past couple of years, getting limited time, that he can be really, really good. Um, so I kind of, for the Rookie of the Year, I went with somebody who's going to play every day, sort of like I did on the MVP, which we'll get to in a minute. But for my Cy Young, I went with Blake Snell from the Padres. I just feel that Blake Snell is going to come out this year, especially after what happened in the World Series. He's going to have kind of a chip on his shoulder and a kind of chip towards the towards the Tampa Bay Rays, and just say like, look, I mean, I'm the guy I was in 2018, and when he did win the Cy Young in the AL. Um, and the focus is going to be on what you Darvish can do for that team. And I just think that Blake Snell, I mean, he's already shown what he can do against the Dodgers, especially in that World Series. So he's a guy who I'm really looking forward to watching this year in the NL. And I did that more of Jacob DeGrom is an easy pick to write in, and I just kind of wanted to have a little bit more fun with it, and play devil's advocate a little bit to Matt here. Um, but for our MVP, is interesting. We both have it on the same team. We both picked New York Met, but I went with Francisco Lindor.
Wow.
Um, I picked Lindor because he's going to go to New York. He's going to be in the spotlight. He's going to get the attention. They're going to try and push the narrative that the Mets are back, and Lindor is going to be a big reason of why that attention is there. They've had DeGrom, they've had Conforto and stuff, and they haven't made the playoffs really. And I just think that they're going to push this Lindor, and he's looked really good in spring so far as well. And I think he's going to want to try and play up to the level to especially because he's on a contract year and he's trying to get a massive extension for the Mets right now as well. So it could be a thing that he tries to push a little harder. So just a guy. I mean, he's got close in the American League before, but it's going to be interesting. I wanted to. I think he's going to have a really good year. So I wanted to write him down as that. Um, and then we kind of just wanted to mention what our wild card teams were. And I have mine as the Padres and the Mets because they're the. It's going to come out of the NL West and the NL East. Whoever finishes second, and in that division, and I had it as Padres Mets.
Yeah, I have in mind. I have the Dodgers and the Mets, but I will say one thing about the wild card in that the NL East is so deep that if the Marlins do take a big step forward with a lot of their young players, and the Nationals are able to kind of keep it together some, I think that there's a possibility they beat each other up so bad with the NL Central having the Reds and the Pirates in there, and the Pirates being just horrible, and the Reds maybe they trade away a couple more pieces, or maybe Sonny Gray doesn't come back healthy for a while, and their offense doesn't bounce back. You could maybe see a couple teams in the Central have really good records because they're playing a lot of games against bad teams, whereas in the NL East, there's really no off days in that division except unless the Marlins end up being pretty bad, which maybe, but I think that's going to be interesting to look at how that wild card race works out. I definitely think the NL West is going to get two teams in, regardless. I think the Padres and the Dodgers are both going to be in, but the East, because it's so deep, I do think there might be a little bit of a question mark there. But I do pick the two top teams in the East for sure. So
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So that's our NL division and awards breakdown. So we will come back next week. We'll bring the AL division breakdowns and probably more of our playoff predictions as well.
yeah,
That'll be our last episode before opening day. I mean, once we talk to you guys again, it'll be 2 days until opening day on April Fool's Day. So
oh yeah.
it's right around the corner.
I just have a gut feeling that they're going to say we're starting the season on time, April Fools.
Yeah, no. I have a feeling that we're gonna turn on the TV and they're just gonna be like, "Oh, guess what? We were supposed to have 30,000 fans in the stands. April Fools,"
Yeah.
and we're gonna kind of see what we had last year. But
Uh,
I mean, it's right around the corner. It's what we've kind of been anticipating. I know we keep saying it, but I think that just goes to our level of how excited we are for this baseball season. We have so many different stories, so many teams that look like they could be so good, and especially with everything that happened in this past year, getting it started on time with looks like with fans in every baseball stadium. Um, Good time to be a baseball fan.
Well, I tell you what, too. The special thing about this time of the year is every single team's fans are excited because even for the teams
Unless
like
you're
the
the
Pirates.
Rockies.
Well, I was going to say, even for the teams like the Pirates and the Rockies, they're excited too because you're about to have baseball and you're about to get to see some of your star players. The Pirates, you're about to see the guy who might end up being the face of your franchise for the next 10 years, and Brian Hayes, go out there and compete for Rookie of the Year. If you're the Rockies, you're about to
You're
go see a guy who, in Trevor Story,
that you're
who
trading in 6 months.
you might be, but you're still you're the Rockies. You're still so excited to see Trevor Story and see if he can chase down like a 40-40 season or something.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where every team's excited. I think more so this time of year. We love playoff baseball. We love the pennant race. Those are obviously so special, but everyone's excited right now. It just even if your team just completely blows and has no star players and has no prospects or whatever, you're still excited. You're going to get to see baseball. So, and we're going to see it on time, and we're going to get 102 more games of it, hopefully, than we did last year for each team. So, I'm excited. I think everyone's excited, and we're hoping that we have a great year. And I hope our predictions come true because this looks like I think if you have the Braves Mets, a big time rivalry, and you have the Padres and the Dodgers, who are a big time rivalry, and you throw in the Brewers there in the playoffs with some of their star power, I think that'd be a really exciting playoff. So postseason for the National League. So I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the season to start. And, I'm also ready to talk about the AL next week because I have a feeling that one's going to be a lot more disagreement than this one.
Yeah, I think there will be more disagreements next week.
Oh yeah.
I know that there's a couple teams that we're very high and very low on, just from our private conversations that we have. Um, from the NL, it's just the battles. I mean, the battles throughout the year that we're going to see. It's going to be amazing. So,
Yeah.
but that's been this Bat Flip podcast episode, and we'll catch you guys next week.
And thanks for joining us.